I want to talk about this while this is still fresh in my head, and now's more of a time than any to do it because of what's been going on. This game has been a big part of my life, so let's talk about it. All of it. Everyone should know who Bungie is. The creators of Halo, one of the best FPS games to ever exist. They dropped Destiny in 2014 and dropped its sequel in 2017. The series has gone on for 10 years now, and so far has no plans of stopping. So what is Destiny? Destiny is a looter shooter, one of the best looter shooters at that. It's a game where you fight aliens with superpowers. That's a massive oversimplification. The series does a lot of things right, but also a lot of things wrong. One of the things I feel it mostly does right is its Let's start with the basics. Destiny is set in the future after humans have achieved space colonization and tech beyond our comprehension. I say after because humanity is basically on its last legs at the point of where your character starts. All the achievements and progress humanity made can be attributed to this thing called the Traveler. It's a giant sphere that creates life and uplifts species. It all kind of fell apart when the Traveler's enemies attacked and almost wiped out humanity. And the Traveler retaliated by creating little goobers that can bring people back to life and utilize the Traveler's powers. Got all that down? Okay, good. I love the story of this game. It's just so good. The setting is amazing, the plot is amazing, the aesthetic is amazing. Obviously, it has a lot of pitfalls in its story, not only with just bad writing. I'm talking about vanilla D1 and Lightfall, but with Bungie's own decisions of the game. I'm not going to go too much into the specifics of the story. I plan on going into it in depth in later videos, but anyways, you play as a guardian, one of the people revived by a ghost, and throughout the story, you learn more about what happened to get you into this entire situation in the first place, as well as make an impact on the world itself. The story is what truly got me invested into the game. It's really cool to see such a detailed story get played out, and the story gets more detailed from the lore makes every game better. Honestly, it makes every piece of media better. But the lore in Destiny is so great. The story of Dredge and Yor and Shimalfur, the Book of Sorrows, the story about divinity. All of it just adds so much more to the game. Bungie could probably pick up any of the stories they have in lore and make a movie, show, comic, whatever, and it'd instantly be a great piece of media. And it's always one of the best things when you see the lore continue in the game, like with Shadowkeep, Beyond Light, and Witch Queen. But most people aren't too into the story or lore from what I know. They're more into the I would say most people get into the game in general more through the gameplay than anything. It has so much going on. Like I said before, the game's a looter shooter, so the main overall objective for every player is to get that perfect roll of that specific gun or armor piece. 99.9% of Destiny players quit before hitting it big. It's the main thing that keeps people grinding the game. One of the biggest things that kind of changed the game was focusing. Weapon and armor focusing allowed you to have more control in what loot you could get. This then evolved into weapon crafting. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I think weapon crafting is one of the best things they have added to the game. It's obviously not perfect. I don't think enhanced perks should exist. They made crafted weapons superior to every other weapon for like a little over 2 years. I also think memento shaders should be available on every weapon, and armor too. But weapon crafting does something I feel is extremely important, and that's giving you time. You get more time to do whatever you want when you don't have to worry about having to grind for that perfect Fatebringer. That's just me though. I like playing other games and doing other things in Destiny, and getting rid of one more grind in the game makes it better. Getting back on point, the gunplay is amazing. Just about all the weapons in the game feel great to use, and exotics bring it to another level. Some do little except feel better than the average gun, and others are completely unique. You're able to find a gun you think feels good, that has good perk rolls, and you'll feel like a monster. Building onto this, you have armor that can amplify this with mods and exotics. Put subclasses into this, and you enter into build crafting. Subclasses also make you feel like a monster, being able to nuke an entire room of enemies or obliterate a boss in 2 seconds, or be able to live through anything. They are what defines a build. You can synergize weapons with your subclass to make your build better, same with armor. Build crafting in general though is pretty cool. It's not too hard to understand, but you can go pretty in depth with it. I'd say it's in the middle when it comes to complexity. Subclasses are pretty easy to understand if you know how to read, and it's mostly just finding what you like and feels right to you. You have a lot of content to play through in the series. You have the patrol areas, they're kinda like mini open world areas where you can explore and fuck around on. You got Crucible, the PvP mode. You have the campaign, which in all honesty gets played once and never again on a character, but that's where the majority of the story is. You have strikes, which are basically mini missions. Used to primarily be their own self-contained stories, but really aren't anymore. Then you have the seasonal activities in D2, which are always a hit or miss. The only activity that I like for this season is Enigma Protocol, and that's only one mission. Reach Executable is overplayed, with the only cool thing about it is that you can use old relics in it. The Battlegrounds this season are actually some, if not the best we've ever gotten, but Battlegrounds as a whole has been part of the staleness of season, since they all usually follow a set structure until this season, where they've actually decided to make them interesting. Then you have the endgame content, the good shit. You have Nightfalls. In D1 they're pretty hard and a genuine challenge. D2's Nightfalls aren't that difficult at all. Instead they created Grandmaster Nightfalls to have an actual challenge that's honestly harder than most of D1's Nightfalls. Then you have raids, the pinnacle of content in the series. They're one of the most rewarding things you can do in the game. You have to understand what you're doing in the encounters, and how to not die. It really isn't that hard. If you're someone who's scared of trying them, don't. Raids aren't that complicated to do. They're the most fun you can have in the game, and the boss fights are immaculate. Honestly, every game that's able to should have them. I know Ghost of Tsushima Legends has one, I still need to play it, and I think Modern Warfare 2 had one or two. We need more though. Oh yeah, you also have dungeons. They're basically 3-person mini-raids. Everything's simpler in them and made to be able to do solo. That's if you want to have one of the hardest challenges in the game, that you're actually intended to do. Honestly, there's so much to do between D1 and D2, but sometimes there's some Alright, enough glazing. Destiny has some major problems. Bungie has proven to us that they're able to make masterpieces consistently with Halo. Every single Halo game Bungie made are genuine masterpieces. But they're able to make masterpieces in general only a handful of times with Destiny, and half of those masterpieces are only masterpieces in one specific area. This GDC presentation tells us so much about the mentality at Bungie for why things are the way they are. Now I want to say this isn't made for the players. This is made for potential employees. It's made to appeal to developers and people in the industry or trying to get into the industry. So while it may sound bad for someone who plays the game, it can sound great to someone who works on the game. But it still tells us the inner workings at Bungie, how they view themselves, and how they view Destiny. And it tells us a lot. I want to focus on this part.
And so here's the last almost painful realization for us about train stations. So remember back when I said that box products are in the business of over-delivery. Over-delivery is actually dangerous for a train station. With every release that you put out there, you're setting a pattern for your community and for your players. And so if we release an expansion with 2 raids, let's say, next year, our community is going to be upset if we go back to only 1 raid. We've hurt the station by making a rogue decision on just one of the trains to over-deliver. But at the same time, and this is why this lesson is painful to us, is because so much of quality and delight in our craft comes from over-delivery, right? It comes from giving folks stuff above and beyond what they expected. And we still want to do that. We still want to surprise and delight and sometimes even overwhelm our players. But we need to be mindful of the patterns that we're creating, the implied future commitments that we've set for ourselves each time. And this is tough. Like, this is honestly one of the ones that we're still grappling the hardest with. Because it's hard to tell a team that has extra cycles and they have energy and they want to do something amazing and they know how to do it. And it totally would be amazing and awesome for the game. Sometimes we have to tell them, like, we shouldn't ship this because it's an over delivery that is going to set us up for failure on future trains.
This part about over-delivery says so much about why Destiny has been the way it's been, how it will be in the future, and probably how Marathon will be when it comes out, unless management changes. It tells us they're perfectly capable of making content, but refuse to because they consider it over-delivery. Management is so afraid of creating patterns, but we know that's not really true. Shadowkeep was way smaller in scope than Forsaken was, but the community thought it was fine. The main reason for that is because they were transparent. Year 1 of Destiny 2 had 3 raids. Year 2 had 3. Year 3 had 1. Nobody was pissed that they stopped doing 3 raids a year. They understood the circumstances Bungie was in and didn't overreact. People only start to overreact about a broken pattern is when they set up the pattern themselves, not through over-delivery, but through their own plans. You remaster every D1 raid at a specific time every 3rd season of the year. So when it's Wrath of the Machine's time to be added to D2 and it doesn't happen, especially when you tease one of its emblems, obviously people are going to be pissed. That's not over-delivery, that's just a fail on your part. We were told they'd add the entirety of the Cosmodrome and only got a little under half of it, only a third if you include the Plague Lands. Not to mention, there's Zero Sign of Siva on it, the thing that ravaged that place. Zero Sign in a game that constantly wants to show an evolving world, and that events have an effect on the world. They use the excuse that players don't want reprised content and want new content. Okay, Bungie, you both know the community loves reprised content. One of the best things that happened in Beyond Light's year was reprising Fault of Glass. You guys made more of a big deal when reprising old content than anything else. They say not to over-deliver, but will on promises just to under-deliver. But getting back to the evolving world part, it's so annoying how this barely happens in the game. They used to actually do this. Shadowkeep in its seasons actually did this. Having the moon not be the same as it was in D1, having patrol activities for the season, and seeing the season of the Worthy Bunkers still be there to this day is awesome. Bungie actually showed us the Cosmodrome after Rise of Iron in a Thunderlord mission, and it showed Siva's effects on it, but when adding it as a patrol location, there wasn't any effects at all. We only really get it when Bungie chooses to. Best example is this current episode. Nessus is being completely terraformed by the Conductor, but you only really see it in the missions and activities. Patrol has barely any changes. There's these new Muna hologram people, and the Vex are wearing BDSM colors. But the Vex Lake isn't terraformed like in the Battleground. There are some places that are changed, but they're hidden away in places you don't go out of your way to go see. That's about as much evolving as we're gonna get, probably. Fact 3 happens and I turn out to be completely wrong? Good. I want to be wrong about this. I just don't think I am.
The lesson that we're still learning is that everything we deliver needs to be a blueprint. We need to understand how the blueprint will be repeated and whether or not we can do that repeating sustainably. And if we can't repeat the blueprint, or if we don't want to, we need to make sure that our delivery of that feature or that content sets up player expectations to match ours, that the blueprint is not going to be repeated.
This is another part that shows how things are for Destiny. We've seen it before, and we're seeing it right now. There's nothing wrong at all with reusing mechanics or setting things up to be used later in a different way, like with legendary campaigns. But at some point, it becomes bland. Menagerie was good because it was the first 6-player activity. It was new and unique. Bungie saw its success and did it over and over and over and over again. At some point, it gets bland. Menagerie felt kinda like a 6-man prison of elders, with unique loot you had control over. When it gets overused with less and less uniqueness, the idea just gets tiring. That's exactly what happened. It's why people groan when you see you have to deposit gambit modes in an activity for the 300th time, or another Bland Strike wannabe that'll become the most infuriating GM Nightfall instead of giving us some actual strikes. The reason the concept for raids and dungeons are able to be overused is because they'll always be interesting. They're always the same but completely different, and that's why they're so loved. You can look at a new raid or dungeon and know you're going to get a completely different experience than looking at the next seasonal activity and know exactly what you're going to get. You know you're going to have to kill waves of enemies. maybe destroy something, go to the next area until you get to the end, where there's a 3-boss rotation each week. I'd also put strikes in with raids and dungeons on this point. I always look forward to playing new strikes, but they only make around 1 or 2 a year now. Another massive problem with Destiny 2 is the removal of content. Bungie has consistently said that they want a cohesive story and for new players to be able to play the Light and Dark saga without gaps. But real question, how is that supposed to happen when they've removed important content from the game? How are you supposed to know how we got from killing a hive god and becoming the young wolf, to Cade suddenly being dead, Uldren being a guardian, and fighting nightmares of people you've never fought before? Oh, Saint Fortuna suddenly alive? Where did all the faction leaders go? Why isn't the Traveler in the tower anymore? How did Savathun come back? Didn't we kill her? Who's Riven? The seasons are just as important to the story as the DLCs, and those were always doomed to go away. So the Light and Dark saga will never be a complete story, unless Bungie does a complete overhaul of Destiny 2 to fit hundreds of gigabytes back into the game. Or, in my opinion, make a Destiny Light and Dark Saga edition, with every piece of content from D1 and D2 packaged into one game. No live service, no train station, just straight box product over delivery. That's never going to happen, especially now though. Bungie really can't help themselves but make false promises though. They've done it way too many times to count. We've already talked about the Cosmodrome, but there's more. Bungie made the promise of having new ritual and trial armor coming each new expansion, then walked it back because people weren't wearing them and it was too hard to do each year. But they're able to release multiple Eververse armor sets, in a single season at times. They then walked that back after massive backlash, is why cancel content that people like. If you're worried about people not wearing them, then make them look good. If you're able to do it with Eververse, what's stopping you from doing it out of Eververse? Then there's the rework strikes. Bungie announced these before Lightfall, and we just got the revamped Exodus Crash, a year after it was announced. Inverted Spire still hasn't been revamped yet, so they haven't completed this promise. I'm hoping they do it soon though. But something I've thought about since the Arms Dealer and Lake of Shadows got reworked? Why the fuck were strike variants removed? The new versions of Arms Dealer and Lake of Shadows and Exodus Crash replaced the old ones. Why? I can see why with Exodus Crash that shit was ass. Why were they not just added those variants like how Destiny 1 had them? Being able to play the original, then the new version was awesome. Why not add that into Destiny 2? It does exactly what Bungie wants, so why not do it? I don't know. But just to put the icing on the cake, Joe Blackburn's response to people wanting a Stasis armor set, after they made sets for Void, Solar, and Arc, a reasonable person would say it only makes sense to make an armor set based on the next subclass in line. Not Bungie though. Joe Blackburn thinks if we get cool armor, then we'll want too much, and ask for even more cool things to be in the game. Remember, don't over-deliver. Is it that bad to ask for things people want in the game? I know about the Twilight Garrison incident. That shit was completely uncalled for, and would obviously leave a bad taste in Bungie's mouth when it comes to even acknowledging the community's wants. But that is such a shit response to someone who's asking for something to be in the game. How is it that Warframe is able to work with their community to make some of the coolest stuff in the game, but the most Destiny's community gets a say in is Minion or the Bob once a year? I don't even play Warframe, and I know they have some beautiful community interaction that Bungie has been needing to do. No wonder the community can't stand them. Bungie erodes so much of the players' trust to a point it hurts their bottom line. Then they decide to build it back up just to do it again. It's a cycle. It's a love-hate relationship. You think we're done? No. You haven't gotten to my problems with the game's monetization. This shit is ass. Bungie loves making free things paid. Dungeons, Eververse armor, shaders, you name it. It's honestly a problem at this point. Eververse has unironically become a plague on the game, honestly. That and price increases that have caused so much problems with Destiny. The increase in seasons was insanely greedy, from 1,000 to 1,200 silver. You can't buy $12 worth of silver, so it's really $15 with some left over. I used to say you get your money's worth from buying it, but you really don't anymore. They've become fairly bland, and took content out of them to put a price on that too. Episodes so far aren't looking too good in this aspect either. From switching from seasons to episodes, they increased the price to 1,500 silver. So now you get no leftover silver anymore. If the other 2 episodes are like Echoes, then they're gonna suck. It's the same drip-fed story, where you listen to 2 or 3 characters talk to each other after doing a seasonal activity. Barely any change. I know they're changing this a bit, to where all the content of that act will be out at once, but it should have already been like that. Episodes were advertised as something different to the season system. I was expecting more of a mix between Forsaken seasons and the normal season system, but after getting our hands on Echoes, It's the same bad system they said they were going to move away from, but with double the battle pass ranks. Like, what the fuck? They're desperately relying on a blueprint the players hate. And now we're at the part that really hurts the most. In October of last year, around 100 Bungie employees were laid off. This led to the final shape and marathon being delayed. I'm gonna be honest, this was an absolute shit show. We lost Michael Salvatori, the creator of the game's music and Halo's music. Pete Parsons, the CEO of Bungie, tweeted out a statement when it happened, saying, "Today is a sad day at Bungie, as we say goodbye to colleagues who have made a significant impact on our studio. What these exceptional individuals have contributed to our games and Bungie culture has been enormous, and will continue to be a part of Bungie long into the future." He really just said a whole lot of nothing. When you have to do layoffs in the first place, there's clearly a management problem, and making the most PR statement you can about the situation. And then there's the reply. These are truly talented people. If you have openings, I highly recommend each and every one of them. Knowing what we do now about these layoffs, and the recent ones, this becomes the most backhanded statement. I feel it was used to shift blame to Sony, because at the time, Sony were doing waves of layoffs in some of their studios, and people started setting their sights on Sony, until we got more info. Surprise! It was Bungie who did the layoffs, not Sony. We found out Bungie missed revenue predictions for 2023 by 45%, but did they really think people would want to buy the most half-assed story that added one of the worst characters and destroyed multiple different characters' development? A story that brought more questions than answers when we needed answers instead of questions, and every character acting like you already knew, with one of the easiest raids we've ever gotten, so easy that people think it was originally supposed to be a dungeon. Lightfall almost killed the company, and if it wasn't for Sony they would have went bankrupt. But just to make that statement even better, in a town hall, Pete Parsnips told employees that weren't laid off that he kept the right people. What the fuck kind of statement is that? You say the people laid off are extremely talented, but they weren't talented enough to stay at Bungie? You got Michael Salvatori, the dude who made all the music at Bungie for almost 30 years, but he wasn't the right guy for it. What the f is it with town halls, man? Last video I literally talked about Matt Booty doing the same exact shit. Can companies stop doing them? Parsons doesn't actually care about the laid off employees. You see what he's done for them compared to the actual employees at Bungie, and it's astonishing. But what would you expect? He's the one who laid them off. Maybe he didn't do anything, because he's a busy man. He had to go to 2 car auctions instead of 1. If you want to see someone who actually cares about people laid off, look at DMG. Oh yeah, what happened to the $3.6 billion you got from Sony? Or the $1.2 billion they gave you for employee retention? You know, so layoffs wouldn't happen? Telling people they wouldn't get laid off, then laying them off is scummy as fuck. We're here now. After the Final Shape's release, one of, if not the best expansions we've ever gotten. Only bad thing is the raid armor, but double the amount of employees got laid off this time. 220 to be exact. 150 employees were also given to PlayStation Studios to start a new studio under them, where they'll finish work on a project. I think it's Project Gummy Bears or something. This shit is so exhausting, man. God. Yet another massive failure of management. We do learn more about Bungie's inner workings though, and it's gross. The man himself, Pete Pumpernickel, at it again, trying to go band for band with Bobby Kotick on who can be the worst CEO in the games industry. Why did this happen? A normal person would ask, since Final Shape was good and it almost broke D2's all-time peak players when it dropped, and probably would have if it wasn't for the server instability. It was seriously 2,200 players away from doing it even with the server problems. This shit is an absolute joke. We learned that after the Sony acquisition, Parsons decided to buy $2.3 million worth of classic cars, and then would brag about them to employees. Then we find out these layoffs were planned despite the Final Shape success. So it really never mattered what happened. Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy were laid off too. Well, not exactly. They chose to leave Bungie with the layoffs. They were working on a game that was known as Project Payback, that was cancelled a few months ago. Everyone thought it was Destiny 3, but due to the layoffs, we now know it was a third-person Destiny spin-off, where you could play as established characters in Destiny. So like Zavala or Saint probably. It was apparently inspired by Warframe and Genshin Impact, which makes me think this game was probably going to be a gacha game version of Destiny, which sounds like ass, but if it wasn't then it probably would have been a good game. Could have had some cool stories to play through. Maybe it'd be possible to play as characters in lore like Shin Malfur, or as other races like Mithrax or Luzaku. But anyways, Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy. We don't know much, but it sounds like they didn't have anything to really do after Payback was cancelled, so it makes sense that they'd leave. Still sad to see though. Along with the Project Payback info, we also got info on what the future of Destiny is going to look like. And it's not pretty. Big yearly DLCs are out. One mid-sized paid DLC and one small free content update each year are in. So things aren't looking too good for the future. Oh yeah, we also found out what got added during the delay after the last layoffs. The Dread, the Dual Destiny mission, and exotic class items, the Verity encounter in Salacian's Edge, Ergo Sum, and GM Excision. So a ton of content. If it wasn't for the delay, the final shape might have been mid. We would have never gotten some of the coolest things in the expansion. The Verity encounter is the most unique encounter we've ever gotten. Exotic class items are a genuine game changer, and the mission for it is the best exotic mission to date. Ergo Sum is one of the most unique exotics too. The Dread, they're so fucking cool. We weren't gonna get any of this. Not only showing us the final shape would have originally been the size of Lightfall for the final chapter of a 10-year story, but that Bungie is capable of cooking and choose not to. It's really just as simple as this. Like last time, incompetent management ruined everything. They decided to spread the company between 4 different games when only Destiny and Marathon should have been the priority, and to have them stable. Then they should have worked on either Gummy Bears or Payback. I'm not qualified to make decisions like this though. The bar to know how not to bankrupt a company through poor management is to spend millions at a car auction. I really don't know how to feel about Destiny anymore. I love the series to death, but I can't stand to see it in the hands of incompetent executive leadership at Bungie, who shuts down changes that'll help the game until it's too late, who cares about their bottom line more than their employees. The state of the game is in a bad place, to the point I don't think it can recover back from. They've lost so much trust in the community throughout the year. I know they'll regain it and lose it all over again, like they've always done, but I honestly think I'm done with Destiny after this year. I've done everything you can do. Played from launch to final shape, and even went back to play all of Destiny 1. The Light and Dark saga is over, and it's looking like that's really it for the time being. I'll continue playing this year's content, since I already paid for it. Don't judge me. I was way too hyped and expected episodes to actually be something different. What will I do after that? I don't know. I genuinely might just quit the game and come back when I feel like it. Or just never come back. I really don't know. I'll probably start playing Warframe. 1999 looks goated, so I'll try that when it comes out. I don't know if I'm even gonna play Marathon. It looks cool, but we barely have any info on it. And given Bungie's problems with Destiny, Marathon is gonna be the same. Would I suggest anyone to play Destiny? Hell no. Not since Bungie removed all of Year 1 and Forsaken. I'm guessing Shadowkeep and Beyond Light are going to be leaving, despite saying expansions won't get sunset anymore. I have a feeling they'll walk that back in a few years if they continue supporting the game. What more can I say? I love this game, I want to see it succeed, but all my hopes for it are dead.